Bob Gimel. He handed it to the one who was to lead it to Azazel. Anyone is fit to lead it, but the Kohanim established a general rule and did not permit a Yisrael to lead it. And Rabbi Yossi said it once happened that Asela led it, and he was a Yisrael. They made a ram for it because of the Babylonians who used to pull it at his hair and say to him, "Take and leave, take and leave." Some of the eminent men of Yerushalayim used to accompany him to the first booth. There were 10 booths from Yerushalayim to the press. It was 90 risks, 7.5 risks to every mill. At every booth, they would say to him, "Here is food and drink," and they would accompany him to that booth, to the next booth, except for the last of them. The last escort could not go with him all the way to the precipice, but he would stand from afar and observe his actions.
Okay.
Okay.
Mahayawase. Okay, so what is the guy who's got the scapegoat and he's standing at the cliff now? What's his procedure? Cholek lashon shel. Remember the scapegoat has got a thread tied around its horns.
Right. Right.
Okay. So he actually breaks it in half on Yom Kippur, interestingly. But this is part of the
Right.
procedure. So just like a lot of other things are overridden for Yom Kippur, for Yom Kippur, for the Seder or Havodah. So he does this. So he takes it and he splits it in two. Chetzio kashar b'sela. Half of it he tied onto a rock. The chetzio kashar ben shtei karnav, and the other half he left tied to the horns. V'chafol achorav, and then he would push it. He would push it backwards. Misgalgal v'yored, and the goat would fall down the cliff and roll down the hill. And by the time it's halfway down, so it would be pretty what's the word? Pretty much mauled. It
Yeah.
would be in a mess by the time it got halfway down the mountain. Okay, why did he have to split the string? This, by the way, for the commentary. Why couldn't he leave it on the goat? Because he wanted to know that atonement had been effected. So for his own personal anxiety, he would be able to see that the string on the rock was left white. Why couldn't he just take the whole thing off and leave it on there? There was a connection
Right.
between the two, so he had to split it and send it down. Okay. Baba Yashav Tachas Sukkah Achrona Ad Shetechshach. So then, now that he's done his job, he had a heter to walk outside the tchum because he was doing the avoda. Now he's done the avoda, he no longer has a heter. So what is he allowed to do? He's allowed to come back to the last station that he passed on his way there. And he spends the rest of the Yom Kippur right there with the guy who's sitting there. So at least he's got a bit of company. Um, Now, one of the chukim of this of the ritual of the scapegoat is that he, in the process of doing the avodah, he becomes tameh, and his clothing also becomes tameh. Okay,
Right.
it's just like the paraduma, right? The paraduma, everyone who works with the paraduma becomes tameh. So does he. Um, and at what point does he become a tameh begadim? So here we have a small machlokes. Mishe yetze chutz lechomas Yerushalayim, says the Tanakama. As soon as he leaves the wall of Yerushalayim, he becomes tameh, which is based on the pasuk. The pasuk says, he needs to wash his clothes, meaning that his clothes become tameh. Okay, um, so as soon as he leaves Mishalech, as soon as he becomes a Mishalech, is when he leaves the city. Rabbi Shimon Omer Mishas Dechias Alatzok. He says no, the shiluach of the goat is when he pushes it off the cliff, and that's when he becomes B'tamei Begadim. So the machlokes over here is just like that. If he comes into contact with anything, does he make it tamei between?
Right.
So the machlokes is between when he leaves the city and when he pushes it off the cliff. Okay. Mishna Zayin Balo Eitzel Par V'Sa'ir HaNisrafim. So back to the Kohen Gadol's scene shifts back to there. So remember there's the bull and the goat that the Kohen shechted, and he's done all the avodah with the blood. Now what do you do with the bodies? Karan v'hotzias emorehin. So he has to cut them open and take out the sacrificial parts, and those are going to go onto the mizbeach. Nisanan b'magis, and he put them onto a magis is a bowl.
Yeah, he said place. He puts him on a plate.
A plate, right? A plate. Okay. So he puts them on a plate, Viktiran al gabe hamizbeach, and he puts them onto the outer altar to burn them. Kala'an b'miklaos, and then the bodies of the goat and the bull do not get burned inside the temple; they get burnt outside Yerushalayim to the base of Shrefa. Okay, Hotzian lebeis Shrefa. So other Kohanim take these animals, take their bodies outside Yerushalayim, to be burned. And they also, just like the guy who takes the scapegoat, they also become tamei, and their clothes become tamei, because that's again because there is a kasov. And from when do they become tamei? Misha yetzu chutz lechomas azara. As soon as they leave the wall of the azara. Right, so basically, that's when their avodah begins, and that's immediately when they become tamei. Rabbi Shimon, just like in the previous Mishnah, disagrees. So he says it's when the actual burning begins. Once the fire on the base of Shrefa has caught onto the majority of the bodies of the bull and the goat. Okay, and again, in both cases, the halacha is like the Tanna Kamma, not like Rabbi Shimon. Amru lekohen gadol. So then they informed the Kohen Gadol that the scapegoat had reached the midbar. How did they know when he would reach? So it says the Tanna Kamma, it was a matter of calculation. Okay, dar kios hayu osin, umenifin sudarin. So the people in sorry, it wasn't a matter of calculation by the Tanna Kamma. He said that it was just a question of signaling. All of those stations that they had along the way to Azazel, to the cliff, they would be watching him, and the guy who's watching him push it off the cliff would say, "Okay, done." Waves his flag to the next guy, and he waves his flag to the next guy, and the message goes click, 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 all the way back to Yerushalayim, to the Har Bayis, and they'd say, "Okay, it's done." So within a minute or so of him doing it, the message would be relayed to the temple. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, he says, no, well, we've got another siman. Halo siman gadol haya lahem. Mirushalayim v'ad beis chidudo shlosha milin. The distance was 3 mil, which is like 3 kilometers. Holchin mil v'chozrin mil v'shohen kedei mil. So you could measure how long it takes for a person to walk a mil, and basically it's a matter of calculation. And you could do it based on the calculation. I'm not sure why Rabbi Yehuda thinks this is a better siman than people coming and waving the scarf to say it's actually happened, but he says that you could calculate it just based on the time that it takes to walk, which seems to me to be a worse calculation because one guy walks slowly, one guy walks fast. There's an uphill, there's a downhill, he trips or whatever. Anything can happen. Rabbi Yishmael Omer halo siman acher haya lahem. He says, why bother with all of these things? We've got a much better siman. Lashon shel zahores haya kashur al pischo shel heichal. There's a matching red string that's left inside the heichal. Every year a miracle would happen and the string would turn white. And what better siman do you want than that? As the pasuk says, if your sins will be like crimson, they will become like snow. They will become white like snow. Okay. And this is not really a thing in the halacha because I think it's just we're not going to pass in any way between any of them. But it's interesting that they felt that Rabbi Shmuel felt that you could rely on this. It was even, and remember Rabbi Shmuel is in the times of the second bais when you didn't
Right.
have
Okay.
all of the regular miracles. So it's interesting that what that seems to imply is that even in the Bais Sheni, this miracle would happen and it was reliable.
Mm.
Just my own little observation over there. Anyways, let's go back to Gimel Vav.
Well, they brought him to the parva chamber, which was in the holy area. They spread his linen sheet between him and the people. He washed his hands and feet, then undressed. The mayor said first he undressed, then he washed his hands and feet. He went down and immersed himself in sin and dried himself. They brought him white vestments. He dressed and then washed his hands and feet. In the morning, he put on Pelusian linen worth 12 mana, and in the afternoon, Indian linen worth 800 zuz. These are the words of Reb Meir. But the comment say in the morning he donned linen worth 18 mana, and in the afternoon, linen worth 12 mana, all worth together 30 mana. These amounts came from the public treasury, but if he wishes to add to these amounts, he may do so from his own. He then came to his ox, and his ox was standing between the antechamber and the altar. Its head was in the south, and it faced to the west. The Kohen Gadol stands to the east of the ox, facing west, and he supports both his hands upon it and confesses. He would say the following: I beg you, Hashem, I have acted wickedly, rebelled, and sinned before you, I and my household. I beg you, Hashem, forgive now the wicked acts, rebellions, and sins where I have acted wickedly, rebelled, and sinned before you, I and my household, as is written in your Torah of your servant Moshe on this day. He will atone for you. And they answer after him, blessed is the kingdom and glory of his kingship forever and ever. Okay.
Okay.
Test Gimel. What are the differences between the first Pesach and the second? The first Pesach comes with the prohibition of it shall not be seen and shall not be found. But the second Pesach, both matzah and chametz are with him in the house. The first requires a recitation of Hallel during the Pesach's eating, and the second does not require Hallel during its eating. But both require the recitation of Hallel when they are offered. Both are eaten roasted together with matzah and bitter herbs, and both override Shabbos. If Pesach was offered in a state of contamination, Zavim, Zavos, ministers, and women after childbirth may not eat of it, but if they did eat, they are exempt from the penalty of karet. Reb Eliezer exempts them even from the karet due for entering the temple. And what are the difference between the Pesach offering in Egypt and the Pesach offering of succeeding generations? The virtues of Egyptian Pesach was on the 10th of Nisan. It required sprinkling of its blood and a bundle of hyssop upon the lintel and upon the two doorposts, and was eaten in haste during one night. But the Pesach of succeeding generations observed all 7 days. Said Rebbe. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. And we are on to Shabbos. This is coming very quickly. He may fasten the cloak with a stone or with a nut or with a coin, provided it does not fasten initially on Shabbos. An amputee may go out with his wooden foot. These are the words of Meir, but Rabbi Yossi prohibits if it has a cavity for pants, it's susceptible to a combination. His knee pads are susceptible to midges combination, and he may go out with them on Shabbos or enter the temple court with them. His stool and his supports are susceptible to midges contamination, and may neither go out with them on the Sabbath nor the temple court or with them. Masks are not susceptible to tumor contamination, and we may not go out with them on the Sabbath. Boys may go out with laces, and princes may go out with bells. With all people, they do so, but the sages spoke of the actual custom. Okay, base Gimel. Regarding a pomegranate or watermelon, a portion of it which is rotten, that portion does not combine. If the fruit is complete on either side and rotten in the middle, it does not combine. The pitum of a pomegranate combines, but its nates does not combine. Reb Eliezer says even matrik is a tahor. All peels contract tumor and convey tumor and combine. Reb Yehuda says there are 3 peels on an onion. The innermost peel, whether it is whole or perforated, combines. The middle peel, if it is whole, it combines, but if it is perforated, it does not combine. Then the outermost peel, in either case, is tahor. Regarding one who cuts a food in order to cook it, even though he did not complete the cut, he is not a connection. But if he cut it in order to preserve it or to overcook it or to place it on the table, it is considered a connection. If he began to separate the sections, the food of which he began to separate is not considered a connection. Regarding walnuts that were braided together or onions that are bunched together, these are a connection. If he began to take them apart in the case of walnuts or to peel them in the case of onions, it is not a connection. And the shells of walnuts and almonds are a connection, and one crushes them. Okay.
Yeah.
And Mila. We have base love. The shtei lechem are subject to Mila from when they are consecrated. Once they crust in the oven, they become prepared to be disqualified through contact with the Tel Yom or through contact with the Makusa Kapurim. And they become fit to slaughter the shalom offering on account of them. Once the blood of the lambs is sprinkled upon the altar, and it's liable on account of the shtei lechem for pickle, nasir, and tameh, and they're no longer subject to Meila. Excuse me. The lechem upon them is subject to Meila from when it is consecrated. Once it crusts in the oven, it becomes prepared to be disqualified through contact with the Tel Yom, through contact with the Nakusa Kapurim, and it becomes fit to be arranged on the shulchan. Once the spoons of the levana are offered upon the altar, one is liable on account of lechem papanim for pickle, nosir, and tameh, and the lechem papanim is no longer subject to me'ilah. The mincha offerings are subject to me'ilah from when they are consecrated. Once they are consecrated in a sacred service vessel, they become prepared to be disqualified through contact with the Tel Yom. through contact with Makusa the forum of the remaining past the time. Once the comment is offered on the older one is liable on account of the mincha, the pigal noser tame, and the remnant are not subject to meila, but the comment is subject to meila until it goes out to the place of ashes.
Okay. Baba Kama.
Come on, hey. Test Jude base. If he gave the money to the Kohanim or the watch and he died, the heirs cannot exact it. I'm sorry. Heirs cannot exact it from them, as it is said, a man who gives it to the Kohen, it shall be his. If he gives the money to Yorav and the guilt offering to Yediah, he has fulfilled his obligation. If he gives the guilt offering to Yorav and the money to Yediah, if the guilt offering exists, the sons of Yediah shall offer it. If not, he must bring another guilt offering for one who brings what he stole before he brings his guilt offering and fulfill the obligation. But one who brings a guilt offering before brings what he has stolen has not fulfilled his obligation. And he gave the principal, did not give the fifth, and the fifth did not prevent atonement. If one stole something and gave it to his children to eat or left it to them, they're exempt from paying. But if there was something which they can have a lien on it, they're obligated to pay. We may not change money from the customs collector box or from the taxpayer's purse, nor may we accept charity from them, and one may ever, however, accept from his house or from the street. If the customs collector took his donkey and gave him another donkey, if robbers stole his clothing and gave him another donkey, they're all his, since the owners despair of it. One who rescues from a river, from a troop of robbers, if the owners have despaired of him, they are his. Likewise, the swarm of bees, if the owners have despaired of them, they are his. Said Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, a woman or man is believed to say, this swarm came out of here, and one may go into another's field to save his swarm. If he inflicted damage, he must pay for what he damaged, but he may not cut off his branch with the intention of making restitution. Because Mishna says the son of Ben Broka, and Ben Broka says, Yochanan ben Broka says, he may even cut it off and make restitution.
Okay, Adkan, and I'm off.
Okay. Okay, good.
Have a wonderful day.
I will see you tomorrow. I'll try to get on
Okay.
as I can.
Okay.
Okay.